So I want to move into the next part of our program and introduce to you a partner of mediaX. Harlan Kennedy is at Orange, a strategy group of Venables Bell Partners, and has a very interesting background, very interesting set of perspectives, and he's going to talk to us about segmentation as mindset. Harlan.
Thank you, Martha.
I always learn a lot when I hear you talk.
Kind of you to say. So before I start, I wanted to thank Susanna for putting my presentation immediately after the wine had been poured. So I have that going for me, if nothing else. So I want to actually give a little background because this presentation will feel different, I think, from the other presentations that you've seen today. My background is in advertising, in marketing. I am the strategic director for a customer experience consultancy that we founded within an advertising agency. And so when we think about segmentation, for me that means segmenting audiences, segmenting customers, hitting them with messages, understanding how we prioritize either our media dollars or product development dollars, or pinpointing customer experiences that we want to create to be relevant for specific audiences. And so oftentimes what our clients will do is create a segmentation study. We'll have 8 or 10 different types of people who brush their teeth. And then we'll understand, well, what are the motivations that they have? Why do they buy oral care products? It turns out that maybe there are very different needs there that we can meet either with new products or with advertising. And so I thought it might be interesting to just look at some of the things that I've either been a part of or other case studies from the world of advertising and marketing and customer experience, and just kind of raise some of those issues or topics for us to think about how we might approach the world with a segmentation mindset, in addition to thinking of segmentation as a tool. This is the most technical slide I have for you today. You think about segmentation, it's something we do from a very young age. From a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old could tell you that's a cat and that's a dog, and then, well, why is that? It's, well, you start to describe, you probably start to describe the way they look first, and what are their appearance? How do you know? Then you might describe the way they behave, and there may be some internal motivations, and that's where it starts to get interesting. And I think this is obviously really simple until you start looking at cats that play fetch and dogs that love catnip, right? And what's interesting about that is that's where the opportunity lies for marketers or for people who are developing new products. When people don't look the way they think, or we think that these are the traps we fall into when you think you've pegged the segment and it turns out that they actually want something other than what you think they might have wanted. So speaking of dogs that want to be cats, the first topic I want to raise is this idea of not thinking of customers, thinking of our target, not just in terms of who they are, not just in terms of their actual behavior, but who do they want to be? What do they actually aspire to? And a couple case studies I want to hit with this. This is actually a really old case study. It goes back to the 80s. The Economist at the time, this was a time when people read news magazines. I know that's a hard thing to imagine in this day and age, but it was a cutthroat industry, very competitive, and The Economist was looking for a way to stand out. And so it turns out they started to do research, and they started to look at, well, why are people reading The Economist? And it turns out that people actually, in some cases, maybe weren't reading The Economist. They just wanted to be kind of seen with The Economist, because then it was almost and again, hard to imagine, but a news magazine is a badge brand that you could, and so a couple quotes here. You don't want to be seen on the tube reading the mail, but you'd rather be rather pleased if you were spotted with a copy of The Economist under your arm. Or there's always something you can use to drop into conversations, which makes you seem really clever. And so The Economist, as opposed to saying, oh, well, let's find out what people really want from their news magazine and talk about how we have that, they realized, oh, there's actually an emotional truth, a deeper truth here, that people actually aspire to be Economist readers. And so when we look at the messaging, it's not about necessarily mirroring, okay, now we know who you are, we're for people like you. It's more about creating a lighthouse. We are the place where this happens, and if that's something that you aspire to, then we have that. Couple of, just in terms of the way they bring that to life, This top line here, lose the ability to slip out of meetings unnoticed, cures itchy scalp. Some of these are just clever headlines, but then they started to get into almost like mini IQ tests in the ad to communicate what The Economist is all about. This you probably can't read. It says, I never read The Economist. Management trainee aged 42. So starting to get a little snarky, a little I want to say maybe not full of themselves, but confident in the Economist and what they offer their audience. We work with Audi both in the advertising side as well as in customer experience. We work with them to elevate their dealership experiences for their owners and also create advertising. This is actually an advertising quick little case here. Audi is actually the brand, the luxury car brand that younger people aspire to. And it's among the top 10 brands Gen X aspires to, and the millennials' #1 answer to what auto brand fits your personality. Now, a lot of the folks out there, if you're a millennial, maybe you can't necessarily afford to buy a luxury car at this point, but it's something that you aspire to, and it's something we obviously want to encourage for future generations. And so when we think about the advertising that we create, it's not just about reaching the people that want to have the wherewithal to buy the car today, but also planting the seeds for what younger people are aspiring to tomorrow. And this is an example of that. My parents saw that spot. They asked me, what was wrong with the first living room? Which I took as a compliment to our ability to actually target the communications. So again, brand awareness after this, hit an all-time high. Again, consideration rose. Just some good positive metrics, coming on. And then folks who have seen the advertising. Again, in consideration, that might be among folks who aren't necessarily planning on purchasing, but future generations who are looking to understand what those brands are and how they speak to them. So that's the first topic I want to talk about, this idea of aspiration. The second one is about treating segments. We have a tendency, or I've seen a tendency in the past, to treat segments, at least in my world, as we really want to put things cat, dog, cow, bird, and create these and say, okay, there are these really finite lines between them. And I think oftentimes we forget that, for one thing, the segments actually, they do interact with each other. And that's actually something that's, I think, interesting, that they do have relationships. And oftentimes what we can do is actually target one segment and have another segment follow. Or target one segment and play off of another segment. So that's actually something I wanted to talk about really quickly. Anyone here have a Slim Jim in the last 5 years? Martha. I'm a little surprised there. A little surprised. It's okay. I did a visual segmentation of the room and decided that there weren't going to be many hands that went up there. So the challenge for the Slim Jim brand was that at age 18, Slim Jim usage just drops off of a cliff, much higher rate than snacking in general. And we're talking about boys here, but 18-year-old boys, they just stop kind of eating like they used to when they were 12. But for Slim Jim, that drop happened at a much steeper rate than it would for other brands, Doritos or Cheetos, etc. So the challenge for them was, how would they attract young adult? How would we attract young adult guys? And how could the brand become more inclusive without alienating those teenagers? And so if we think about it, we've got these snack graduates, these young at heart. Right? These are the older guys we want to go after. And this is what the usage and awareness, usage and attitude study turned up, was that you kind of have these two different groups, right? All right, so, seems like maybe the young at heart might be more of our target. Let's bring our current segment, the current user, into the mix as well. And what you realize is that, and this guy, by the way, he's a little more mature. He's probably thinking more about, he's holding down a job and a little more responsibility, putting, maybe he put the Xbox in the closet and he's kind of moving on with his life. The young at heart, we're talking guys, 22-year-olds here. Maybe he's holding on a little longer. He's not in any hurry to grow up. If we think about Billy and how do we not, I'm going to call him Billy here, how do we not alienate him with a communication? And these are the names we came up. So we've got Billy, we've got Will, and we've got Bill. And it turns out that Billy actually kind of wants to be Bill when he grows up. It's something that feels much closer to his world. And so Bill became the target. You wouldn't necessarily think that these two would have more in common, at least as we are, at least in terms of how we're interested in it, than Will and Bill, because demographically, Will and Bill are actually much more similar. So the insight here was that, the newfound responsibilities of adult life, very difficult, and Slim Jim is made from stuff that guys need, and it's almost the antidote to that growing up, right? So quick spot here.
As a registered nurse, it's my job to distribute Slim Jims to patients suffering from male spice loss as discreetly as possible. Nobody likes to be embarrassed.
Tantric yoga guy, jalapeno, matchy match, monster stick, twice daily, recumbent bike guy. You're staying overnight for more observation.
Gah! Slim Jim, made from stuff guys need.
I have another one, but we're gonna move through it. So again, results. Relevance here is really what we're talking about. Relevance eventually translates into purchase intent. But that key one up top, relevance increased 26%. Second one, increased 16% for guys 18 to 29. And then, of course, sales rising, outpacing every snack but corn nuts, just for those who are keeping score. So we've taken into account the relationship between people, thinking about segmentation as a aspirational. I want to talk a little bit about, that was kind of, in a way, my advertising life. Now I run this customer experience consultancy. And so let's talk about how segmentation applies to that, creating customer experiences, branded experiences for people, and what the with care means, because there's a flag that goes along with that. My colleague, my partner in crime in running VBP Orange on the design side is Mark Woolard. And he, in a previous life, he did a project for Nordstrom that centered around solving the cosmetics department within the department store. The cosmetics department hasn't changed that much in decades. They're under assault from companies like Sephora. They've just created a different experience and so they're losing. Particularly, this is back to younger customers. They have a comparison point that they've grown up with Sephora, and now the department store cosmetics department doesn't make any sense to them. It feels antiquated. And so what can we do to kind of make this a more relevant, rewarding experience? And so we have here a segment that they put in place. There were actually 5 segments. These are the 2 that matter most. This is Lux Lauren up top and Beauty Blair. Lux Lauren is actually, this is her makeup area. And Lux Lauren is very much about high-end products, but fewer. She knows the things that she really wants and wants to go in and get them very conveniently and not have it be a huge hassle. She's not necessarily as into experimentation with different brands. Beauty Blair, on the other hand, you can see that she's very much into experimenting with colors, brands, etc. And so how do you create an experience that actually works for both of these? And what they did was actually, I'm not going to go through each of these stations, but there's they created a core that was called Nordstrom at the Core. They created this almost like a safe zone within the cosmetics department where none of the associates from any of the brands can come and approach you. It creates a self-guided, safe area where you can try out different products, consult with someone who's not employed by one of the cosmetics companies, read some editorial about what Nordstrom thinks the look of the season is, etc. And so this is how it would actually show. And the interesting thing is that Lux Lauren actually, more Lux Laurens turned into Beauty Blairs over the course of the, as they saw and were exposed to the idea, which is interesting because there's more opportunity to sell more and different things to the segment on the right. Really quickly about Audi, we work for their customer experience. This is their customer experience strategy. Audi crafts every moment for me. So this is what it should feel like when you go into an Audi dealership. We spend a lot of time thinking about how to bring this to life for people in different interactions they might have at the dealership. Right now, one of the ways we do that is by offering people choices so that I can actually choose, for instance, if I take delivery of my car, to be oriented around my car, I might choose to come back later, or we can do it now, and then I feel like my time is being respected. But what's interesting is, in hearing some of the earlier speakers, how could we bring technology into this? How could we bring, if we think about real-time segmentation, if we can actually have a more granular approach to segmentation for Audi owners? For instance, something like loaner cars, which is a big headache for dealers. Oftentimes they run out of cars. They don't necessarily have a great way of deciding, well, what kind of car would you give which driver? But if they understood that maybe I was thinking about buying a new car, they might actually upsell me from the car that I have now. I know that sounds like an easy thing to do, but in the day-to-day business of a dealership, that's difficult. That seems like something that a segmentation, a more detailed or almost a mobile or a behavioral segmentation could help them figure out. Here's the warning, is that I don't know how many of you have heard of the apartment building in New York with the rich door and the poor door. So there's this building that's gone up, and the folks who are rent stabilized, this is their entry over here, and the new folks to the building get to walk in the front door. And so that raises questions when you start to segment on customer experience. You're treating people differently. You're trying to find ways of meeting everyone's needs, but there's a warning there to not be creating different classes of customers. And so I think this is something that we keep in mind as we're creating new experiences within the Audi dealership. Thanks very much.